Welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Hello. Welcome back to the Prosperous Empath. Kat here. I am so excited to share today's episode with you all. I've been looking forward to sharing this episode for months now, probably about 8. And my husband and I agreed that after we got over the 12-week hump, that's when we would feel comfortable sharing it on the podcast. So before we jump in, I just want to offer a little disclaimer. Today's episode could be really hard for some of my listeners to hear and to tune in, especially if you have been struggling with your own conception journey. I want you all to know that we are pregnant, that we've been blessed to conceive naturally and to not have had any miscarriages, thank God. And follow your own intuition if it serves you or not to tune into this episode. I think that I would have really appreciated being reminded a little bit more along my own journey that I always had consent, that I could always opt out of conversations and podcasts and books, and even just answering questions about my own journey, that there's always the opportunity to opt out. Today's episode is going to be, a lot different than most episodes I've recorded so far on the podcast, but I wanted to share a bit of a personal update on our pregnancy journey and really how we got here, because it's been a long journey for us. And something I appreciate about others who have gone before me is their willingness to be authentic and share about their experiences, the ups and the downs and the twists and the turns and the challenges. And we've certainly had all of those. And I'm not going to get emotional, but I really wanted to just be vulnerable with you and share a little bit of what this past year has been like for me, because it's been really challenging and there's been so much to celebrate and so many beautiful things happening in the business and in my personal life and in my family. And getting pregnant has really been the one thing that just wasn't happening for us. And that has been so hard to sit with and not have answers for, and be patient. And patience is not my forte when there's something I really want. I'm sure so many of you can relate to that as ambitious empaths. So I want to share all of the details and hopefully perhaps share some knowledge that maybe you don't already know, because there was so much new information that I learned for myself along the journey that I wish I had known sooner. I think it can be so hard to find out some of this just really candid, honest information until you're on the journey, for one thing. And then many couples don't share openly about their pregnancy journeys, which I can completely understand. Many people in my world have had very traumatizing and painful pregnancy journeys. So I can completely appreciate wanting to guard that information close to their hearts. But for me personally, I have found consistently that talking openly about my experience with coaches, mentors, colleagues, friends, and family, it helps me make peace with the unfolding of my journey. And so much more than that, it also supports me in gleaning the lessons learned and gleaning the wisdom and then sharing it forward. And that is something I am so committed to doing. And it's a big reason why I launched this podcast. Uh, I have so deeply appreciated those who have come before me, friends, clients, family members who've been so generous with me about their pregnancy journeys and all of the ups and the downs. And so I wanted to do the same and share with you, with my beautiful community, about my own journey. And this is a vulnerable one for me. So I'd certainly appreciate hearing from you. And if there's anything that you take with you for yourself, message me over on Instagram, send me a voice memo on LinkedIn or Instagram. It's certainly the quickest way to connect with me these days. And I'd just love to hear from you and connect with you. And if there's someone in your life who's also struggling with their own conception journey, feel free to share this episode with them. It's actually going to be a 2-part series. So much of this information that I'm going to share are things that I learned through my own personal experience and through self-advocating for myself and through a whole lot of asking really direct and candid questions with friends and colleagues and clients and medical professionals. And something I've been grateful for over and over throughout this journey is just how much work I have done on myself that prepared me to self-advocate for myself in the way that I have had to do over the past year on our journey. So if there's any wisdom or lessons learned that I can share and perhaps prevent you some of the lack of clarity, impatience, misunderstandings, confusion, fear that I've experienced, then this podcast and sharing this story will have so been worth it. So let's just start from the beginning. And I'll also share that my husband is on the same page with me about me sharing all about my journey. And I so appreciate him for being up for that. It took just about a year for us to conceive. We officially started trying a year ago, back in February of 2023, which was just a couple months after we got pregnant, after we got married in October of 22. But if you've been here a while, you know that my husband and I have been together almost a decade. So I've certainly been dreaming of trying and dreaming of getting pregnant with him for years and years. And if I'm being quite honest, I have always wanted to be a mom. I've wanted to be a mom, for just about as long as I can remember. So I have certainly been ready, and this past year was probably that much harder for me given how ready I felt and how confused and fearful I've felt along the journey with why we weren't having success. And truth be told, I mistakenly thought we would get pregnant immediately. Of course, that is my ambitious nature at heart. I'm so practiced at when I put my mind to something, I follow through and I achieve my goals when they're super clear and I have a really clear vision of what I want and the impact it will have, like that art of manifesting is something that I've been doing for years and years. And so I did not understand why this was different. And having that expectation that this was going to happen for us immediately certainly made it so much more challenging for me. I recall one of my best friends and one of my bridesmaids when I shared with her that we were trying to conceive, she said, Kat, it's probably going to take you about a year. I would prepare for this taking about a year because that's what it had taken them. And that was the last thing I wanted to hear. That advice was so hard to receive from her. And that's exactly what it took for us. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but that is certainly what our journey looked like. Um, and I'm also, I'll be 40 when I deliver. So it's an advanced pregnancy or advanced age pregnancy. So when we were starting trying last winter, a couple months after I had a preconception visit at the Mount Auburn Hospital Center for Women in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is a very well-known hospital in the Boston area. They have a beautiful women's center, and it's also where one of my best friends gave birth, as well as one of my cousins. So I had heard really beautiful experiences from both of them about their journeys and about how empathic the midwives and the doctors were there. So I felt really clear that that is also where I wanted to deliver. And I think something I've really come to appreciate throughout this journey as an empath is that working with empathic professionals, whether it's in business or in healthcare, is a absolute must for me. And that has become even more clear over the past year of this journey. Um, one of my former coaches has this definition for a breakdown, which is how so much of the early months of our conception journey felt for me. She defines a breakdown as one of these three circumstances: either an unfulfilled expectation, a thwarted intention, or an undelivered communication. Now, it's likely that you experience more than one of these in areas of life where you're experiencing breakdowns, but typically there's one that is more central or more front and center. And for me, having this unfulfilled expectation, like I just had the expectation that we were going to get pregnant immediately, and my heart was set on it. And having that unrealized was so heartbreaking for me. It was really painful and it was completely self-induced, which I don't like admitting, but honestly, it's the truth. And I think that that is something that so many of my clients and so many ambitious empaths experience, is that when we get really clear about something we want and we have an expectation around what it looks like, that goes unfulfilled or not on the timeline that we expect, that can just be really hard, and it can create additional pain and suffering that is completely optional. But it's just a really apt description for what that felt like for me in those first 6 months, 9 months of trying. And I'm sure it didn't help that I had been tracking my period for years, using this app called Kindara, which I really like. It predicts the date of your next cycle as well as the peak days for ovulation. One of the early members in the first cohort of my mastermind had recommended this app to me, and I had been really just committedly tracking ever since 2019, to be honest. So I felt so clear about when I was ovulating and how we could maximize our chances. So I just thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be so simple. And I'd also heard this just, I don't know, like old wives' tale maybe, or just common advice, which turned out to not be true at all. That if you just have sex every other day during that 5-day ovulation window, as well as the week before, that you'll maximize your chances of conceiving. And that was just completely not true. When we went to the preconception visit after 5 months of trying, they let me know that actually, when you first ovulate, the first 24 to 48 hours after testing positive on an ovulation strip, is when you maximize your chances of conception. Now, a good friend had actually encouraged me to buy those ovulation strips. You can just buy them over the counter at the pharmacy. You essentially pee on a stick, and the stick tells you exactly when you're ovulating. And I don't think we started using those ovulation strips until maybe 8 months of trying, because no one had told me that, and I didn't have access to that information. And I think that's such a common experience among people I've talked to since trying to conceive. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. And if only I had known. And why isn't this information more readily available? And honestly, I had that experience of frustration pretty consistently over the past year of like, wow, why isn't this more publicly available information? Why don't people just know this more? So I thought that was just really interesting and frustrating. And one of the reasons why I wanted to share so candidly about my journey, because I am well researched and I read a lot of books about things that I'm up to and goals that I have. And so it's just kind of wild to me how, seemingly educated I could be and still how much I did not know. During our preconception visit, the midwife had let us know that given my age of being, I guess I would have been 39 at the time, 38, just on the cusp, that after 6 months of trying, we could start researching and pursuing alternative approaches to getting pregnant. And I started researching IVF centers in Boston. I reached out to several clients who I had supported them through lots of their IVF journeys and got some referrals from clients who were in the healthcare field. And we had a consultation with one of them to explore what the process would be like and also just get a feel for the practice. And I had probably the single most painful experience for me, and not physically, like more in the emotional sense of painful, just a terrible experience with one of these IVF clinics. I was really struck by how non-empathic the practitioner was that we met with, my husband and I, virtually. And we were just kind of on this virtual call, and the practitioner wasn't hearing me, and she wasn't hearing my needs. And I had to self-advocate for myself several times to try to get the care that I needed in that appointment. And, at this point, like when I am really clear about what I want and I'm not getting it, my husband, he just likes to sit back and watch me because he knows he's in for a show. And honestly, like I was so grateful for all the years of work that I had done on myself that allowed me to be so candid and so communicative about what I needed and what I wasn't receiving. It was just a really terrible, horrific feeling that I haven't experienced since. And we walked out of that Zoom room and I was like, okay, that is a super clear sign that this is not the practice for us, that we are not meant to be cared for here. And I decided to go back to the hospital to pursue all of the initial testing and screening and blood work that we could do at our hospital to assess whether there were any medical reasons for us having not conceived. It's typically a more kind of direct path to do that with the IVF clinic, where we're going to pursue IVF, because some IVF clinics will make you get some of those testing a second time. Unfortunately, the Mount Auburn Hospital has a birthing center, but they do not offer IVF at the birthing center. But they had let me know that we could do all of the initial screening and blood work at Mount Auburn. And I had initially decided, well, let's just go, the direct route and go with the IVF clinic so I wouldn't have to do this twice over. But after having that experience, and I also just had this felt sense in the back of my mind that, we weren't going to need IVF. Like I just kind of felt it. And so it just made me lean back on the hospital and the practitioners that I trusted, where I felt cared for. And we ended up doing all of the initial screenings there, which it worked out just fine. But honestly, this was about the time that it was, late last spring, early summer. And I was really starting to struggle emotionally. I think I was really taken out by how much I wanted this and how hard it was to see so many people I loved pregnant or having beautiful families or giving birth. And seemingly I was kind of consistently seeing more and more people in my world who were expecting or had just conceived or had just given birth. And it was so hard to want something so deeply and to not be getting it and to not understand why we weren't being successful. And that experience, as someone who is so driven and so ambitious and so practiced in like being and doing what it takes to get what they want, it was so hard to give up that control. And clearly it's just this perceived sense of control, because clearly I couldn't control the journey. But I think when we're really attached to something, it makes it so much harder to surrender and to give up that perceived control. And, this is something I am so practiced in doing in business because I've had a decade of practicing, right? Like I've had a decade of practicing seeing something I want to create or having a vision for what's next in my business or a program I want to launch or a next iteration of the mastermind that I want to create, but then being willing to detach from the results or the timeline of when I get there. So in business, that almost has felt natural to practice, but it is an entirely different thing when it comes to your own body. And particularly for someone like me who places such a high value on their own well-being and health. Like my mom is a nutritionist. Like I have grown up being so conscious and self-aware around diets and eating a well-balanced meal and prioritizing my physical and mental and spiritual health. And so I just, I was super attached to getting pregnant, and I didn't see it because it was an entirely new area of life where I had never gone after a goal like this before. And I was really kind of blindsided by it, which I think is, again, why we all need community and mentors and coaches and support to help us see how we're blinding ourselves and getting in our own way. So, while while I was really going through that emotional angst, we did pursue all of the initial blood work and the pap smears and the tests to detect whether there were any maternal issues, and there just weren't. All of the results came back normal. Everything came back within normal ranges, which is a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's a blessing to know that, that like my body is healthy and that everything is functioning normally. And at the same time, it was so hard not having a reason or an excuse or a justification or an explanation for why this wasn't happening for us. Eventually, my husband did some of his own testing as well, and all the results came back within the normal limits. So we were really at this place of just feeling at a loss, feeling like we were doing what we knew to do, following the advice and recommendations that we were being given, and things just weren't working out for us. So I'm going to pause the episode here, and I look forward to coming back next week and sharing the rest of our journey. And before we go, I want to share just a couple of invitations with you. Clearly, in the last couple episodes, I've shared that the way in which I am partnering with clients is evolving and changing, and I am so excited about it. I am so excited about our Unbounded and our Emerge Masterminds. The Emerge Mastermind for early entrepreneurs is currently open for registration. If you are at a place of wanting to carve out the powerful next chapter of empathpreneurship for you, one that calls you back to your roots of prioritizing community care and reciprocity over doing things alone and siloed in your own world, I would love to connect with you. If there's anything this pregnancy journey has told me and taught me, it is that we cannot thrive alone. We need community and support and being surrounded by values-aligned creators who have similar goals and share similar values and approaches. There is a deep, radiant power in you, and I would love to help you unlock it. Registration is open through the end of next week, Friday, April 15th, and we begin on Wednesday, March 20th. So you can hop on over to the show notes where we will drop the brochure with all of the information. And you are welcome to message me over on Instagram if you have any questions or just want to chit chat more and more about the program. I would love to chat with you, totally zero obligation. This will be the last cohort of Emerge that we launch in 2024. Now, if you are a more established entrepreneur and you're really more interested in our signature Unbounded program, which is for established entrepreneurs, we are opening the doors again in April. And again, I would love to speak with you about Unbounded. It is a beautiful program filled with just high level and deeply self-aware creators who are just creating beautiful things in their business and doing it in community, surrounded with the generosity and support and high-level coaching that is included in Unbounded. We'll drop more information about Unbounded in the show notes as well. I'm so looking forward to coming back next week and sharing with you the second half of my pregnancy journey, because honestly, this is where things started to get a lot more interesting and fun, and the path started to clarify and flow a lot more easily and naturally for me. And honestly, if I was going to get to that place, like I actually had to face my own internal walls and really hit that breakdown moment. And this is something I share in my masterminds a lot, that we actually have to break down in order to break through. We actually have to hit that own wall, like our own internal wall, where we realize that who we're being and what we're doing is not working anymore. And that is going to require a new set of tools, a new set of resources, a new set of habits and practices in order to generate a different result. And if I'm being honest, this was that moment for me. This was my breakdown moment that created the clarity and eventually the breakthrough on the other side. So come back next week and hear about the unfolding of that. And before we go, I do want to share just a little bit more about how you and I can work together between now and when I give birth later this year. Our due date is in September. So I've been sharing over the last couple episodes that I'm shifting my business model, and moving forward, and I'm only going to be working with clients in our 2 masterminds, which I am thrilled for, because y'all know how deeply I believe in the value and the importance of values-aligned communities for empathpreneurs. So if you are an early entrepreneur and you are still finding your footing as a CEO, you're still clarifying your signature offers, creating your boundaries, creating your pricing structure, and really finding your confidence and your way, I would love to have a conversation with you and share more about our Emerge Mastermind. Our Emerge Mastermind is a 6-month mastermind for early entrepreneurs, and this is the last time we will be opening the doors to register for Emerge in 2024. Registration is currently open through this Friday, March 15th. It is a beautiful program where we share so much of the mindset hacks and the business foundational pieces that we wish we had known when we started out in business a decade ago. I co-host this program with my co-coach and dear friend, Laura Klein-Taylor Rathel. And it's just a beautiful program where you get some deep connected access to Laura and me, and high-level coaching, and an abundance of resources and training materials, and access to our amazing community of unbounded members who've been in our community since 2019. Something that we're offering to the Emerge registrants that we've never done before is an invitation to join us for our second in-person retreat alongside our Unbounded Masterminders later this May in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts. So it's a 3-night, 4-day in-person retreat. If you're curious, I will drop the program guide in the show notes, as well as my call scheduler. I'd love to chat with you, and of course, 0 obligation. Now, if you've been waiting for the moment for us to reopen the doors for our Unbounded Mastermind, which is our year-long high-level mastermind for established entrepreneurs, we will be opening the doors again in April, and I would love to chat with you about Unbounded. Again, you're welcome to schedule a call with me. You're welcome to message me over on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'd love to chat with you and just really discover how and whether and which of these programs may be a great fit for you. Thank you so much for tuning in and really just sharing in this joy and beautiful time of life with me. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.